Um, So we're going to do the agreement of sale changes first. That's at the bottom of your page. You'll see ASR page 3 and of 14 and 4 of 14. Not a lot of changes to it, as I said, and it all comes down to the mortgage clauses. Now, these are all mine, except for those agreements. No, that's all standard agreements you said. So buyer financing. You'll see now that there are 3 options, and now they put them in option 1, option 2, and option 3, because apparently there were a lot of agents that didn't know how to explain the old way when we just had either waived or elected. So they kind of dumbed the agreement down for this, and they put in the option 1 is not applicable. Buyer will not obtain mortgage finance. Buyer will not obtain mortgage financing. So obviously that's an outright cash deal. Then option 2 is the waived, and that is the same exact language. It says this sale is not contingent upon mortgage financing, and paragraph 8H is not applicable. Buyer and seller understand that the waiver of this contingency does not restrict buyer's right to obtain mortgage financing for property. What brought this all about, this change all about, was agents getting an agreement of sale, getting an offer, and they call their seller and say, we got a cash transaction. We have a cash deal, which is not what they should have been saying. What they should have been saying is that the mortgage contingency is waived. Because what was happening is sellers were believing that they had a cash transaction, then they get a call from an appraiser that wants to appraise it. Now they are outraged because I thought this was a cash deal. And I have experience with that with our own agents being in that situation, because they didn't explain that the mortgage contingency was waived, but it did not eliminate a buyer from obtaining a mortgage. So that's why we had paragraph or the option 1, that Standard Forms Committee at PAR found that that would be a good way to solve that problem. So when you have a buyer, you want to talk to them, well, this would be a cash deal. Are you going to get financing any place along the way during the transaction? Are you going to get financing? Well, I might, I'm not sure yet. Well, then we want to check option 2, right? Because that gives them the ability to get the financing. What obviously you want to do if you're checking option 2 would be the same as if you're checking option 1, where it's outright cash deal. You want to have a proof of funds. So you don't want to check option 2 and then they get financing, and now they can't get financing, and now they are obligated, they're out on a limb. So you want to get a proof of funds that they have enough money, liquid money, that they can complete this sale without getting that mortgage. So that's the key here to using option 2. And then the option 3, of course, is just the standard that they're going to elect to get a mortgage. And then they added that subparagraphs C to G only apply if option 2 or 3 is elected in paragraph 8A. So obviously that's saying it's a cash transaction. So subparagraphs 3 through G do not apply to our agreement. Just clarifying that. Questions on that? Going to see now. I do want to caution you also. Some of you have your own templates where you put the forms in your templates and you fill some of the standard stuff in them. Now we're coming up with the changes of September 1. You want to make sure that you update your own template that you have the new form in. Because literally, I have had an agent that was using, an agent of ours that was using agreement of sale that was about three editions ago. And somebody caught it. Uh-huh. Yes. Yep. Yeah. On September 1, everything will be updated. PAR has already sent all the to the vendors that that have a contract with PAR, DocuSign, .loop, there's a couple others. So they already have sent them to them so that they'll be ready in there, and they'll be on PAR's website as well. Any other question? On page 4, there's only one change. I think it's a good one. One change, and is they moved, that's why it's in blue, they moved the mortgage commitment date to right under the mortgage contingency. What's that? Well, the reason they did is because there was too many people, agents, leaving the mortgage commitment date blank. They just happened to miss it. So now they moved it into a more conspicuous spot. More conspicuous spot. Which is the same reason why when you go through the agreement of sale, you see that within blank 5 days in parens, or 7 days, whatever it is, the reason PAR put a default in there is because agents were not filling those blanks in. So then what was the date if it's blank? So they just put a default in there. That's why they did them. That's why they did them. They also some years ago on the agreement sale, you have the sale price, you have the deposit, maybe you have a second deposit, and then some years ago we had a total. Believe it or not, agents couldn't add because the total that they put down for those figures didn't add up to the sale price. The PAR said, "Well, let's just take it out." That's why I say they dumbed down the agreement. All right. Any other questions on that? Good. All right. David, do you want to go over whichever one you want to go over?
Okay, I'll do the CVC,
CBC.
our favorite form, most popular form these days. So the CVC, the first change is going to be right there next to the top. They've added no law or association of realtors has been set or recommended the broker's fee of any or any amount of cooperating compensation. Because, you know, it's all negotiable. It's all depends on how you work things out with your buyers, how you work things out with your sellers, with the listing contract. So first little tangent is whatever you agree on your listing presentation, right? When you sign the listing contract, whatever is going to be shared with cooperating broker, that's the number that's supposed to go on this form. This form is not supposed to vary from the listing contract. So, you know, typically the property, the listing broker, cooperating broker. The next change here is listing broker agrees to pay cooperating broker at settlement either dollar amount or a percentage of the purchase price. This change happened last year, the purchase price, right? It's not the net purchase price, it's the purchase price of the property if cooperating broker is identified as the broker for buyer in the agreement of sale. That's a clarification to avoid conflicts or confusion about who is the procuring cause on the sale. If you are representing the buyer and your name is on the agreement of sale, that's who this form is for.
Yeah, and I'll tell you why that's clarified. And we have, we had a situation before all this. We had a situation where an agreement of sale came into one of our agents, and before it was signed, another agent called and said, "That's my buyer. That's my buyer. Change the name on there. Take that agent's off. Take that agent off and put my name on there. It's my buyer." Anyone remember that one? So that's my buyer. Of course, we didn't. We don't have any right to do that. So ended up that the agent that thought it was his buyer filed for arbitration because he wanted the commission. So it went to arbitration. Long story short, that agent lost because there was testimony from that particular buyer that said, "I told that agent I did not want to work with him anymore, and I told him why I didn't want to work with him anymore." And so he got zero anyway after going through that. This whole thing tries to eliminate those type of situations. So, we don't care if another agent says that they were the procuring cause, you fight it out with the other agent. Don't fight it out with the listing agent. We have nothing to do with it. So that's why it's there.
So would you say the procuring cause, the guy that gets the agent gets the client over the finish line?
No. That's a myth. There's a lot to procuring cause. We hear about procuring cause, and we can have a whole 3-hour class on procuring cause. But the myth is for many years, and still is obviously because Robert brought it up, is that if I carry the bride over the threshold, I get the commission. That never has held up because there's a lot of things that go into procuring cause, and one of the main one was there a link, a break in the link of the chain during the process, or was there an abandonment? Did that agent abandon the buyer, and now the buyer goes to somebody else and buys? There's a lot to procuring cause, and it's a good subject that we should have one day for a class of what procuring cause is. But there's a lot to it. Another myth is I have a buyer agency agreement signed. I'm due the commission. Not necessarily. And we've had agents that hurry up and get a buyer to sign a buyer agency agreement so that they can claim, "Oh, I have a buyer agency agreement. It's my commission." No, not necessarily. So there's a lot to it. So that's a whole class in itself. But good point, Robert.
On the CBC, what if the person is zero? So like one of the parties that you don't use, you still have to.
Well, you could use the form and put 0 in there, but no, the answer is no. You don't need, because there is no cooperating compensation. Yeah. Yep. I'm working right now on the sale. I have the buyer, and the seller is not offering any buyer any cooperating compensation. So it's up to my buyer to pay my commission. Yep. Okay.
So one thing that was taken off of this form was that this is not to be used in conjunction with the agreement of sale. Remember that? And, so, now we have, 3A, we will put commission, and this form is mentioned in that line. So just a note on the CBC, when I'm sorry, when my phone rings, it goes into my hearing aids. So
I heard that.
yes, you might. It's turned up pretty good. these, you want to get these taken care of right away. You want to get these taken care of before you get your agreement of sale signed, right? The spirit of this is you're finding out what the listing side, what the seller is sharing in cooperating with the buyer's broker, right? So, and you need to know that ahead of time. If somebody tells you, for instance, oh, it's 3%, and then you feel like you don't have to put any, your buyer agency is 3%, so you don't have to put anything on the agreement of sale. And then all of a sudden, the agreement of sale is executed, there's nothing in 3A, and you don't get one of these signed. And they, maybe the agent says, we're not going to sign it, or it was a mistake, I thought you were talking about another property. Now you're under contract and you're working for 0. So get this taken care of ahead of time so that you know 2 things. You know how you're getting paid, of course, and you also know how to advise your buyers on what their financial responsibilities are going to be. That all makes sense? You want to get this ahead of time in writing, signed and in writing and signed before you have that agreement of sale go out, so that you know if you don't have one of these, it's effectively 0. If an agent says we'll get that to you later, it means at this juncture it's a 0. So you probably should put that on the agreement of sale. You could put your 3% on the agreement of sale, send it over to them, and then say, send me your CVC, and I can make that adjustment. That's one of the possibilities, but this is to be done ahead of time.
No, not at all. And that's the problem. There's a lot of confusion on the CBC, and a big part of the problem is that brokers are at fault for not educating their agents, and so that's the problem. But if you don't receive the CBC, you're showing the property, you do not receive the CBC. Can you send them a CBC? And that's what I would do. Before I showed it, I'd call them, because I'm hearing it all the time and David's hearing it all the time. Well, the agent just tells me what it is. They told me they'd send me the CBC. They didn't send me the CBC. I would send them a CBC, sign it, send it to them, and have them sign it. Because some of them, I think, are just too lazy to prepare the CBC.
I mean, you could even put it in your DocuSign or .loop, put the agent's name, place for them to sign, make it easy for them, send it over, just get it taken care of, whether they want to participate in that way or not. But that's a way they can look at it, and they can just sign it electronically on their phones or on their computer, and it'll be done.
Robert? And then
another way to look at the question that you asked, Glenn, is I would think that if you were to submit the agreement of sale, there's no mention of commission in there, and the seller and the buyer now have an agreement of sale, and you don't have an agreement on compensation, they're not to be obligated anyway.
correct.
You can send a CBC all day long.
Well, I don't do it. I make sure I get that first.
Yeah.
You're saying.
I'm forgetting to pass the mic around.
Yeah.
Dominic had a question.
Once the agreement of sales, I guess, execute or in negotiation afterwards, and you agree on different terms, do you have to fill out another one of these or no?
No, the CBC is gonna,
It's just,
if you do the percentage, you don't have to fill another one out. If you do a dollar amount, then you probably are gonna have to do, that's why I always suggest percentages, not the dollar.
And the CVC is supposed to reflect what's on the listing.
It was just for the CBC. Just if we could clarify, because I'm new at it, there's 3A you mentioned, so I went and looked at it. It's listed there. Why would you need, why do we need this if it's listed on the sale of agreement?
No, it is a great question, but there's a bit major reason for it.
Yep.
The CBC says that the listing broker is going to offer cooperating compensation to the selling broker. If you read that paragraph, it says that the buyer or the seller is paying the buyer a commission on buyer's behalf. So it's not going through the brokerage. The brokerage is not paying it. It's not cooperating. That's the difference.
Still putting one
That's
for
the
the
difference.
ownership on the buyer.
Yeah.
It'll,
Why-
it'll be a separate line item on the offer at closing. You'll see that if they're paying a 3A, there's the broker's commission, which is CVC, and then there's going to be a separate line item that will be 3A. There's and there's also another reason, but Marika has her hand up and I don't want to keep her waiting.
None, well, going off of that, I mean, have you guys seen that show up as a second line? Because I have not. I mean, I'm seeing it show up because like the way you described it is it's two different formats. So that buyer or that seller, I'm sorry, is a line item from them to our brokerage, but it's not necessarily coming like that, right? Because I see it as their brokerage paying both of us. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah, the brokerage is not paying both of us. The seller is paying Keller Williams Real Estate on behalf of the buyer. On behalf of the buyer. So
okay.
seller is paying Keller Williams Real Estate on behalf of the buyer, and that's the way it's worded. On behalf of the buyer, X amount, 2.5% or whatever it is.
It's his format or something.
Yeah. It's not a cooperating compensation. In your listing contract, you have a place there, right, for cooperating compensation?
Which is why it shows up as additional then.
And then you put something in there because the seller has agreed to offer a cooperating compensation. And so that's what's there. So that's why we use the CVC to notify the other side that the seller is willing to pay a cooperating compensation. So it's two different come from, if you will, kind of two different pots, because now Keller Williams is not. Now the other thing is, and I just had this question this morning. Our agent had a cooperating compensation, and the buyer went ahead and put in 2.5% in that. Now, what do you do? And I think David just mentioned that a little bit ago. That agreement of sale should be altered to take the seller concessions out for the commission.
Yeah, it's important on 3A that it's, it says in addition to this, what's on the CVC, right? In addition to what's on the CVC. So if you get a CVC that has 3%, don't put 3% down because that then effectively becomes 6%. And if you're on the listing side, you have a CVC that's signed and you see it on the agreement of sale, make sure you take it off. Otherwise, you're going to be working for much less.
I mean, I come across it pretty often when the guy says, we'll just include it in your offer. And they're not submitting a CBC and I'm listing it on there. And then the brokerage pays it anyway. Like, you see what I'm saying? It's not necessarily depicted anything on the HUD or on the Alta. Should that be depicted differently?
When we first went through all this stuff, I talked to Lori about this in Keystone, and she said that should be a separate line item. Now, whether they're doing that in practice or not, I don't know. But, and that, again, that was months ago. So maybe they have sorted things out in what they feel is a more efficient way.
And in that point of the transaction, Marika, take your check and run. No matter where it is on the office. Yeah, it really would fall back on the contract anyway, but David's right, but, you know, I'm sure, yeah.
And in a true accounting way, the check from the other brokerage should be made out to Keller Williams Real Estate, and then it should get distributed through us, but it doesn't. You know, for purposes of efficiency, they cut two checks, you know, one to the listing side, one to the buyer side.
Right, that's correct.
So, ask you, tell you to add it to the deal. I could be wrong, but I have this feeling that they have an idea that they want to pay what they want to ask for. And that's one thing, but get back. Right. Right, they don't want to say anything. Yeah, back to the CBC. Want to remember that. Sometimes I've had people say, the CBC is in documents. I don't put that. That's right. Yeah, people told me that, and I said, I don't think it's supposed to be there. They said, well, that's what they can get it there. And I don't think that's supposed to happen. I just want to mention that, just out of clarity. I don't know if anybody else has experienced that. So, yeah, people told me this.
Yeah. Well, I will tell you that there should be nothing at all in the MLS about commission. I have gotten, in the past 10 days, I have gotten 3 violation notices from Lehigh Valley. Lehigh Valley has a great system. I don't know why PMAR doesn't pick it up, but they haven't. They have the capability to do it, but that's another day. Lehigh Valley has a system that it's actually goes through showing time, that any slight imperfection in your listing comes up as an automatic email to the agent and to myself for a violation. And I've had 3 from the same agent in the past 2 days that it was just a typo. Room size came through for room size, 1.5, room was 1.5 feet instead of being 15 feet. You know, that's how detailed that it is. And it keeps the MLS really clean. It really keeps it clean. But I will tell you, I had 3 recently that came through, and the violation was comments about commission. And LVAR, first offense, is $2,500 if you do not change it within 48 hours. So second offense is $5,000. Bright MLS is about the same. I don't even know what Pocono's fine is for it. But that's how serious they take it, because it's a violation of the settlement with NAR that NAR made. So that's why it's very serious, and they take it off. So fortunately, all 3 of our agents changed it within 48 hours, and nobody paid a $2,500 fine. Showing time, it's through Showing Time's program, but they work with Lehigh Valley's MLS. It doesn't, PMAR is not set up and yeah. In Showing Time?
Yeah, I know. Disclosure. So,
Nothing should be in Showing Time either. Nothing should be in Showing Time.
It's separate, it's separate.
separate email coming.
That's not showing time. After they make an appointment, they automatically email.
Okay, that's totally different.
Yeah, as long as they're not on showing time giving.
Right.
I get separate email.
Separate email,
Right.
it's fine.
No, not at all. The agent or the brokerage is setting it up, which brings me to a recommendation that I have, which is right along those lines, Glenn. We get a lot of CBCs is a big issue. I will tell you, I was hoping that maybe it would go away like a lot of states have had. Doesn't appear that it's going anyway, anywhere soon, because that's why PAR made these changes to the CBC. But I had set up a showing with an independent company that is pretty astute and does things very well. And when I set a showing up, I got an email right away from that agent that says, "Thank you for showing my home. Attached is the CBC." Since we dominate the market in listings, right? I mean, you see the charts on a team meeting. We dominate the listings. I would highly recommend, and I'd like to see you all do the same thing. Do the same thing. I will find out from that agent.
We were,
It's not happening. They're not going to the site. One other problems with the site, not all of our agents are putting their listings on there. So that's the challenge with that site. So that's why I'm saying, I'm not sure how, get to me, Glenn, and let me know what company that was. Might be the same company, but it was good to see. I've got it, and everybody knows what it is, and there's no hassle. So if we, with all the inventory that we have, if all of us start that practice, maybe we can change the tide here a little bit.
Yeah, Galligans are doing that.
Are they?
They're sending an email out. If you request a showing, you get a showing confirmed on one of their listings. They'll send an email with the documents and the CVC on it.
what is it, auto reply, or do they have somebody checking it?
Couldn't tell you.
We'll ask Amy. We'll ask Amy on broker hours.
I mean, Amy said the other day, I send out, when I get the confirmation, I send it out an email, which you could, seems as though maybe she does it, but it could be automated and it could just be somebody on her staff.
I think you could set it up like in a signature on your email with that whole message. And then all you have to do is pull up that signature and type in the agent's email address and send it off. You're not
Yeah.
typing everything every time.
Yeah.
Right?
Just a real quick question. I forget the CPC, is that before, say, a buyer showing, or is that before the creation of this document, or before what?
It's before you're showing. Is a proper way to do it. Why before the showing? Anybody have an answer to why before? Sonia's got it right. You want to 2 reasons. You want to share it with your buyer, right? Sonia? Second reason is you need to know what you're being paid, right? There could be a buyer that if there's no buyer compensation or cooperating compensation, they don't want to pay the commission. So when we have agents that get into that situation and the buyer says, "I'm not going to pay the commission, so I don't even want to look at the house."
So I run into the issue where they don't send over the formal agreement, but they just send over a text or an email that says 3% or 2.5%. Is that sufficient enough? And then when I tell my buyer that, and then if they do decide to go forward with the house, then I send over an offer with the CVC.
Yeah, I think that's a shortcut. That's better than nothing. And
Seems to be how it works.
and at least you have something to say, "Hey, agent, this is what you told me. Now your story changed," right? So I think I don't think it's the ideal way to do it. I think because if you have the CVC, obviously you load it up into DocuSign or .loop, whatever you have in part of your file. Your text message is not going to be part of that file.
And the CVC has the property address on, the names of the
Correct.
brokers, just has all the information. You know, it's always a possibility. I mean, you know, when you ask somebody what it is, they'll send you a text with a number on it. And then later it could have been a mistake. You know, it could have been a mistake that Oh, sorry, I was thinking of the wrong house.
I've had
Well-
that happen. And it's very scary, 'cause, like, I've had somebody like, give me a dollar amount for a home that would probably be percentage, I'm like, that doesn't make sense, so.
Right.
Like, oh, wrong property. entirely.
And the other thing that the CBC is there to protect you as well, especially if you're the listing broker, just for the example that I gave a while ago. Paragraph 1 is cooperating compensation is being paid to the cooperating broker that's identified as the broker for the buyer in the agreement of sale. If you have a text message, that doesn't have that clause in there. Okay. Are we good?
I think we beat that one.
I'm not a red on it.
Yeah. All right, you want to do the appraisal, David?
Sure.
One of your favorite forms?
Yeah, they really simplified this form. They really did. We get questions, for the appraisal contingency. Well, what about if I just want to make it like, $10,000 below the appraisal amount? And that wasn't really an option there, you had to put in, purchase price or a number. But now it's a little bit different. So in paragraph 1, the agreement of sale is contingent upon the property being appraised in a manner that acceptable to the underwriter if the buyer is obtaining financing at the value that is equal or higher than purchase price. That's an option, right? The B could be like, 5,000, 10,000, 100,000, whatever, less than the purchase price. And C could be a dollar amount. So where this form, there are some brokerages are using this form on a regular basis to give the buyer an option to terminate, which is a whole other conversation, which like I advise against using this form so that the buyer can terminate on the appraisal. But where this really came out were finance deals where this form gets sistered with the escalation addendum.
Yep.
Right? So let's just say like we have a listing that's $300,000. And let's just say for the benefit of argument that the reason that the house is listed for 300,000 is that there seems to be an agreement between the listing agent and the seller that it'll sell for that and it'll appraise for that. So if you submit an offer for $350,000, I think it's reasonable to question whether it will appraise for that, because if they thought it would appraise for that, they would have listed it for that, right? Does that make sense? So if you're going to offer $50,000 high through an escalation addendum or just flat out offer $50,000 high or whatever that number is, in order to reassure the seller that they're not going to have a problem later with the appraiser, you would put the appraisal addendum form in and say, look, we're going to offer you 350, but don't worry, this form says it only has to appraise for the 300 that you have it listed at. And that is, security blanket for the seller. And of course, we have to make sure that, when you're discussing these different strategies with your buyers, you have to make sure that they have the money to do that, right? Let's do this and we'll do that. Okay, great. Terrific strategy. Do you have that extra $50,000 in your bank account to put forward toward that? You need to show that. So, and this C, or I'm sorry, the B would answer that question. Say, you're making a particular offer and they have this, let's just say $10,000 extra cash to cover up what we refer to as an appraisal gap. we can put that $10,000 in there. And then we know they can make that up. That's what the B was added to this addendum, where that wasn't there before. Sure. You want me to repeat it the same way or confuse it differently? So on the prior appraisal addendum, we had the purchase price. You know, we had a blank or purchase price, if not filled in. That was where we could either do the purchase price, which is A, or we could do C, which would be a number. Like, let's say, again, in that same scenario, the listing is 300, we're gonna offer 350. We could put 300 in that line, and now we would put that on line C. Now, if the buyer says, look, I have $10,000 to make up any kind of underage where the appraisal comes in a little bit lower, I'm willing to go another $10,000, but not any more. You can put in B, $10,000 less than the purchase price. So they have that building to make it up, right? If it comes in under that, then they have the ability to negotiate. That all? Clear as mud?
And I don't want to get in that much to the escalation form, because that's also for another class. But I'm seeing a lot of escalation clauses today, and I think to some degree they're being misused. First of all, a seller does not have to consider any escalation clause. They don't have to consider any escalation clause. So you have a buyer and they think that, well, the seller has to consider it. They have to consider it. That's not the case. They don't have to consider any agreement with an escalation clause in it. As a matter of fact, I have recommended to my sellers not to use the escalation clause or the escalation addendum. Let's take the best agreement of sale and let's negotiate the best offer. Let's negotiate with that buyer. And I will tell you another way that I had success 3 times is the last one was that the house was listed at 275 or thereabouts, and I got an escalation clause in. I had 3 offers on it. All 3 had escalation clauses in it. The highest escalation was up to 300,000. So, you know, if you're a buyer, I'd say, well, why do I want to show my best hand? It's like playing poker and showing your hand to the person across the table from you, because that's what you're doing, right? So this one was $300,000. I said to my seller, I said, well, these folks said that they will pay $300,000. Let's negotiate and we'll counter offer to them at $300,000, which was over the list price of $275. And the agent gave me a lot of pushback, obviously. Well, why? I said, well, they said that they can afford 300. Now they would pay 300 for it. So we want to negotiate with your buyer. Do they want to pay 300 for the house? That house sold for 300,000. So I used that 3 times and it worked all 3 times. But the escalation clauses can be a problem. The other thing is on the escalation clauses, one of the, we had a blow up a week ago, is an escalation clause came in with $2,000 above. We had that gap, $2,000, and you can put in any amount. And the seller took another offer, and we had the buyer that put in the higher amount in the escalation clause with a $2,000, thought he should have had the house, but it was up to the seller. The seller was more comfortable with going for the offer that was $2,000 less, so he didn't honor the escalation clause. So the buyer thought they had to honor his escalation clause. No, he doesn't. He can, as we all know, a seller can choose whatever agreement they want to choose. It's not us or or any buyer that can dictate that.
It's not to be confused with an auction, right? At an auction, you know, you can bid up, and they're gonna take the highest price. There are other terms in our agreement of sale. And the seller, you know, rightfully so, is gonna be looking at the whole agreement of sale. What are the terms? You know, when does it close? What kind of financing do they have? All these other things that, you know, maybe are gonna override the purchase price. You know, are they gonna look at, they're gonna start at a high number, and then they're gonna have to fight with the buyer the whole time while they try to get all that money back through inspections or appraisal or whatever it is, you know? So it's not an auction, it's not a guarantee.
Then what's the point of an escalation clause for the buyer?
See about, personally, I would tell you that the reason we have that escalation addendum is because years ago, when the market was really hot also, is agents got creative and brokers got creative, and they were writing up on additional terms. They were writing up their own escalation clauses and getting themselves in trouble with it. And PAR never agreed with the escalation clause themselves, but they said, to protect the brokers and the agents out there, we better do a standard form for it. And that's why we have it. That's the only reason we have it. You know, I think, you know, I think that the escalation clause is a detriment to our sellers. Is a detriment to our sellers. That's why I picked that 300,000 and negotiated, because had I not said we're going to counteroffer at 300,000, the escalation clause, the sale price would have been about, on the escalation clause, it would have been about 280 with the escalation clauses that I had. It would have been 280. That was a detriment when I have somebody that would go up to 300. I'm representing my seller. That's why I used the 300 and negotiated it that way.
Don't you have to show the other offers if you are, you know,
My seller declined to use
the escalation?
the escalation
Okay.
clause.
But if they were gonna use it, then they would have to show
Yeah.
the other offer.
But that's why the seller declined to consider any escalation clauses. And we had somebody that was playing poker that showed his hand.
You tell that when somebody says you have an offer, you tell them that you're not looking at escalation clauses.
I haven't said that up front. I haven't said that up front.
I know that I say that I'm not gonna go to highest and best, I let them know up front, give me your best offer, so I'm just wondering if you.
Yeah, you know, and it goes back. That was a much better way to do it. That was a much better way to do it, is highest and best. Given, you know, that's how we used to play the game before we had escalation clauses and all the creative crap. We would say to our buyer, we had a buyer, there's other interested, what's the highest you would pay for this house, and let's make that your offer. I'll give you another quick example of not using, and this before we had escalation clauses. I had a house for on the market. Within 24 hours, I had 5 offers on it. And so I asked for highest and best. No escalation clause. I asked for highest and best. Only 3 participated again. Only 3 participated again. And would you believe that 2 of the counter offers from the buyers came back exactly the same? Exactly the same. Cash, same price and all. So out of the 3, I go back and tell all the agents, well, we got to do another round here because I have offers that are exactly the same. Another seller or buyer dropped out, so I'm down to 2. The one, because the third one again said, no, I'm not playing the game. So the 2 that were left, they counter offered but one counter offered extremely high and ended up, both of them were cash, ended up getting my seller $30,000 more than the other offer that was on the table. That's representing the seller. That's the seller getting the best, and that's how the game is played instead of these escalation clauses that does detriment to the sellers.
So we're dealing with a lot of first-time home buyers.
Yep.
So what I'm hearing from you guys is we shouldn't even offer an escalation clause because there's still a chance that they won't, even though they're the best in the escalation, the seller might say, you know what, I'm not taking the escalation.
Right, absolutely.
So they're almost fighting against each other. If they have an escalation clause that's 20,000 higher than the offer of the house, you as a smart listing agent say, listen, we don't have to use this escalation clause. This is where we know this person's willing to go to. Let's try to get it done there. This
Mhm.
way, you're dealing with a buyer and saying, okay, we're going to use an escalation clause. There's a chance you might be the best and they might take it, but there's
Yeah.
also a chance that you're not. So
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
give us the best offer that you have.
Yeah, the other thing, the other thing is listing agents, you have to think about when you get into these escalation clauses, is that a reasonable price that you're going to get the appraisal for if it's a finance situation? Because I also had many cases where buyers put in a ridiculously high escalation clause, and I said, we're not even going there. I said to the other agent, it's not going to appraise for that, because what some buyers play the game is, well, I'm going to offer $50,000 over, and then when the appraisal comes in, then we'll negotiate the price down. Or when inspections come in, we're going to really negotiate on the inspection. So
I would have thought the escalation clause was a agreement between the agent, the buyer's agent and the buyer. The seller's agent or the listing agent gets to see that. That's a document that they see as well, or no?
the escalation clause,
Yeah.
yeah, it's submitted with the offer.
Oh, it's submitted with the,
Part of-
oh, so
part of the
everybody
agreement.
sees all that. Yeah, that's where you're giving your cards up. Your whole
Yeah.
hand. Gotcha, okay.
I want to offer.
Oh, yeah, you can. Depends on what side you're on. Depends on who you're representing.
So we're at paragraph 2,
Paragraph 2.
Yeah.
In what?
appraisal contingency. We're still doing that?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so paragraph 2, the contingency period is 30 days, depending on, like what side are you on? You want to make sure that this form, either does or doesn't time out. Like if you're in, say you're in, it defaults to 30 days, but say you're in a 60-day close or something, like, I have a contract, Randy knows, contract is way out into October, right? If we were going to use this form, we'd want to have, on the listing side, we would want to make sure that this form lasts the duration of the transaction.
And that's in blue, so that's moved from the,
From the first
yeah,
paragraph. Let me see. So buyers obtaining financing appraisal should be selected by the lender to whom the buyer has made an application. If buyers not obtaining financing, appraisal shall be selected by the buyer. And C, seller will provide access to the property to the appraiser who is selected.
And then the paragraph C there is a new sentence that says seller will provide access to the property to appraiser who is elected. Apparently there was situations where sellers would not let appraisers in, and that's why that was added to it.
And that's something that was made clear in the old agreement of sale, the current agreement of sale in paragraph 8. But now, if maybe it's changed, I have to look at that, but that was made clear in the agreement of sale, but it's probably probably required some clarity they added on this form. So if the minimum appraised value is met, or the appraisal is not completed within the contingency period, buyer accepts the property at the purchase price and further agrees to complete settlement at the purchase price by any of the following combinations thereof. At the buyer's sole discretion, additional funds, the settlement, adjust the loan amount, adjust the loan to value ratio in the agreement of sale. Buyer's election of any of these options shall prevail over the terms of the mortgage or finance contingency paragraph of the agreement of sale. All other terms remain unchanged. So yeah, any fees resulting from these loan terms will be responsibility of the buyer. And then this is paragraph 4 has been moved. The minimum appraisal value is not met. Buyer will deliver a copy of the appraisal report to the seller. Buyer will, within the contingency period, terminate the agreement of sale by written notice to the seller, and all deposit monies returned to the buyer, or enter into a mutually acceptable written agreement with the seller to negotiate. If the buyer does not terminate the agreement or enter into a mutually acceptable written agreement, change the terms addendum, with the seller within the contingency period, buyer waives this contingency. If you look at 4A, 4A1, 4AI in here, terminate the agreement. I won't spend a lot of time on this because I spend a lot of time on this normally. I don't like that the buyer can get a low appraisal and then just have the option to just terminate the agreement. I like the terms of the agreement of sale personally. I know this is the contract, this is the law, this is what you have to go with, right? But I like, if you're working with a buyer, the appraisal comes in low, don't just send out a termination notice. Let's have a conversation. Maybe the seller can help out in the situation. And if the seller doesn't know that there's an issue until they get a copy of the appraisal and a termination form and the deal's canceled, they don't know whether or not they have an opportunity to help make this transaction carry through. Right? They might say, we'll pay for points, or we'll reduce the price, or something like that. As a listing agent, I don't want to wake up in the morning and find a termination in my email. I want to, maybe you guys can tell, but I like to keep talking. Let's keep talking, make this happen, right?
Yeah, that's why the appraisal contingency was the original reason for it, was for cash transaction. It was not meant for every transaction. It was not meant for every transaction. So that's why what David is saying is, buyers, those of you that are representing buyers, you think you're protecting the buyer by using the buyer or the appraisal contingency, and you check off that it has to appraise for the purchase price. But are you doing your buyer really justice on that? Because the agreement of sale has the mortgage contingency already built into it. And that's what you should be relying on. And what David is saying is, by not using the appraisal contingency and checking off a purchase price, using the agreement of sale the way it works is it does give the seller the option to buy down and make it work, or the buyer may be able to come up a little bit. So the transaction doesn't necessarily have to fall apart because you've got a low appraisal, and it depends on how much lower the appraisal is. But that's the whole reason, and that's why David is saying that, is David and I keep saying to agents so often, right? David was, don't create all this new language. Just let the agreement of sale work. It's all in there. Let it work, whether it comes from appraisal, or it comes to inspections, or it comes to any of it. Just let the agreement of sale work. It's all there. But everybody wants to put extra paragraph and extra verbiage in.
This is where our skills come in. This is why you guys are all sitting in this class, right? So that you increase your knowledge. What the agreement of sale says. What what can be done, what shouldn't be done, right? We get to learn all these things. So when something comes in, we hit these bumps in the road. That's all, that's what they are. Our professionalism and our skills come in to be able to negotiate and keep a deal alive. Or if it's in the best interest of our client, to let a deal die, if that's what really is the best interest. But, you know, we get to learn and understand these things. So when stuff comes up, we don't just throw our hands up and say, well, we got a low appraisal. No, let's talk, keep talking, keep asking questions. You know, take a break, have a cup of coffee, go back, ask some more questions. But one moment.
Yeah, so with all that, I know what I have the way that I deal with this, and maybe somebody else has a better idea or suggestion to help this. I try to avoid using this, only if it's a cash deal, and I still don't use it with the cash deal unless the buyer is concerned about the price. Because a lot of buyers, they're gonna go above the prices, I don't care. The price is not, more times than not, that's what I get, and I still have conversations first to say it could be above value, whatever, and if that's okay with you or not. And if they say no, then I introduce this to them, but I don't just offer it upfront because I think it's, like you said, I think it causes too many issues where it's, okay, I decide I want to buy the house now because now I want to have appraisal, they don't have to do that. So that's just kind of a nutshell. And I kind of, a lot of that makes sense for everybody, or that's somebody has another suggestion as to another way to do it, but that's how I've been dealing with this.
Unless I have a buyer, that wants the appraisal contingency, I don't even bring a cash buyer. I don't even talk about the appraisal contingency because what is fair market value? What's that?
Whatever I'm gonna for.
Yeah, fair market value, you've probably had that in real estate school, and I remember most of it, fair market value is what a willing and able buyer will pay to a seller that is willing and able to sell. So that's fair market value. Appraisers are not fair market value. That's their opinion. That's their opinion. They're not fair market values. They're not God. You can get three appraisers and get three different prices. That's why I don't bring it out. If the buyer wants to buy it, that's just what the price they're willing to pay for it. It goes back to the auction, David. You know, run the bids up, and when the buyer doesn't want to pay any higher, they stop bidding. So they're paying fair market value. So real quick, go ahead.
Sorry, just a quick question about the wordage in this. So the contingency period, buyer may obtain an appraisal from the property, blah, blah, blah. But on B, it says if buyer is not obtaining financing, appraiser shall be selected by the buyer. Are appraisals required for cash deals?
No,
No, okay. Because the shall made it sound like maybe they had. Okay.
no. If you're getting finances, the lender dictates who's appraising it. But if you're a cash buyer, then you can dictate who's appraising it.
Okay. You don't have to give appraisal.
Right.
Yep. Okay.
But you're looking at the addendum, so if you're submitting the, if you're submitting it, you're saying that you're getting it, so you shall.
Gotcha.
Thank you, Robert. Glad you came back in. Okay, so where is the mortgage contingency in the agreement of sale? You got it all in your hand. Page 4 that I passed out for the team. Page 4. Mortgage contingency. The first mortgage of the property. It asks for the loan amount, the term, the type of mortgage, and then the next sentence is the mortgage contingency. Is the appraisal contingency rather. For conventional loans, the loan to value ratio is not to exceed blank %. And that's where you would put in 80%, 70%, 65%, whatever it is. Because then if you do the math, it's got the appraisal has to come out to the sale price. But as you read on down through those paragraphs is what David's talking about, is there's options there that you might be able to negotiate if it doesn't meet that.
And there also is an agreement of sale that if the this would apply to not the addendum, but the regular agreement of sale. If the buyer terminates the agreement of sale, which Bob never sees for paragraph 8, the buyer could be compromising and expressing that they're acting in bad faith. So follow the agreement of sale. If an appraisal comes in low, with or without the appraisal contingency addendum, have a conversation with the listing agent. Appraisal came in low. How can we help? Buyer doesn't have the money to come all the way up there. He's not going to get financing. Financing is going to be based on the appraisal. He doesn't have the extra cash to make up the difference. Can your seller help out here? Let's work on this together and see what we can get accomplished, see if we can get this transaction closed.
Yeah, I think most of you've heard me say it before. Most of the terminations I get on transactions because of mortgage is the buyer is canceling because of mortgage or under the mortgage contingency. Paragraph 8 is what it's stated. That should never be on a buyer doing it. It should be the seller doing it. It should be the seller terminating, because it states in there, and David probably could pull it out pretty quick. There's a sentence in there that says that if the buyer terminates under paragraph 8, under this paragraph, if buyer terminates, it could be a act of bad faith, and their deposit monies could be in jeopardy. What's that? Yep. Yeah. Yeah, what Glenn is saying, he's had many times where the other agent is saying, have your buyer terminate under paragraph 8, and Glenn won't do it. And Glenn's doing it the proper way. Glenn's doing it the proper way.
So, yeah, at the bottom of page 4, that last sentence, right? Termination of this agreement by buyer due to mortgage lender's denial of buyer's mortgage application may demonstrate bad faith by the buyer and result in the forfeiture of deposit money to the seller. So, I have read that to a listing agent in the past and say that this is not, my buyer does not want to terminate. My buyer wants to work this out. So my buyer is not going to terminate. So if your sellers can't help me out, your sellers are going to have to terminate. And they'll say, yeah, well, my seller's not going to do anything. So you need to terminate. No, sellers need to terminate. Right here it is. And that, I'm not going to put my buyers, in a compromised position. If your sellers want to end this deal and get their house back on the market, they need to terminate. If they'd like to work it out, my buyer wants to work it out.
Okay.
Robert has to. We're going too fast here.
So let me give you a scenario. Say you're representing a seller. You're under contract, the buyer put down a hefty deposit. And you wake up in the morning, find a termination notice, they've cited paragraph 8. How are you advising your seller?
So you woke up in the morning and you had a gift in your mailbox.
Yeah, they're terminating.
Yeah, they're terminating.
They've sent you the termination notice. They've cited a paragraph that they don't have the right to cite, but also says in there that they've been warned, they're not acting in good faith if they do this. How are you advising your seller?
And you probably have a return of deposit, distribution of deposit monies on the bottom of on the bottom of it, with the money going with the money going to the buyer. First, I would go back to just what David did to his listing, to the listing. Is my buyer is not terminating. Now I'm sorry, you've got a termination from the buyer. I would recommend to the seller, if we're not signing we're not signing this release and distribution of deposit monies, because here it is. David just pointed it out to the sellers. They don't have the right to terminate. And then go back to the listing agent with that.
You are the listing agent. in this
I'm sorry, the buyer's agent. Go back with buyer, my seller's not, read that sentence to the buyer's agent and saying your buyer deposit is in jeopardy because they're acting in bad faith.
Now, if your seller just wants to be done with it, put the house back on the market, that's a whole other story. But, you have a big deposit back. The buyer wants to get their money back, but say the deposit's $20,000, that's, in my world, that's pretty spicy, right? So maybe the buyer wants to get that back quickly, right? So what you could do is you could ignore the release that's on the bottom of the page, and you could send them back another release that, cuts it in half, or, gives the seller $5,000 for loss of marketing time. And, the lion's share is still going back to the buyer perhaps, but it's an opportunity to negotiate and get something for your seller. If maybe you have 50% written in your listing agreement, that you get a little bit for yourself out of that, right? But, that the buyer might be willing to sign that in order to get their funds back, rather than drag out to 180 days or whatever anybody put into, 26C.
Yeah, that's another good point, David. That's another avenue that you could take, is prepare a distribution release with the part of the money coming to the seller, and then send that, because as David said, the other thing is he said, well, we have mortgage commitment, the buyer's been denied, mortgage commitment is not due for another 3 weeks, and now what is the seller going to do? The seller can terminate, as we know, after the day after that mortgage commitment is due. At his discretion, at the seller's discretion, they can terminate. So you might have a conversation with your seller, is that, hey, look, these people tried to get a mortgage, they got denied. I've talked to the lender. Doesn't seem like we have a chance here. I've talked to my lender, which is something you should be doing, because both Marty and Maria downstairs can do rescue loans, and maybe they got denied, but there could be a chance. And that's what David is talking about, is maybe there could be a chance to revive this. And so I talked, and there's just no chance that these buyers are going to get a mortgage. So why don't we just mutually agree, buyer and seller mutually agree, to end the agreement of sale? Now we don't need a termination. We only need the short form. Release and distribution of deposit money, because it's a mutual agreement that buyer and seller have agreed to end the agreement of sale. Okay? If we go past the settlement date, you don't need a termination agreement. You need a release and distribution of deposit monies only. So I think, and I had one the other day that came through from a very seasoned agent, a very, very seasoned agent, that had the standard form with the two forms combined, and there was nothing. The buyer signed it as terminating, but there was no reason. And I called the agent. I said, why is the buyer terminating? He didn't have a reason. He just wanted to terminate. Well, that didn't work so well.
Because I felt like it.
Right. All right. Something else on that, David?
No, I don't know what to add to that one.
Okay. All right. I think one last thing. And that is a change to the listing agreement. A change to the listing agreement. That's where you'll see at the bottom, it says XLS, page 5 of 7. And we only have one change to it, all in red. And this paragraph addresses coming soon and all this. Says that some MLSs have rules that allow delayed marketing of listed properties or delayed buyer access to those properties. These rules may be known as delayed marketing, delayed showings, coming soon, temporarily off the market, or other similar terms. Seller may be required to sign an additional waiver or release to comply with the MLS rules and policies. So now we have this new paragraph, September 1, that is going to be one that you have to check off. Broker will not use delayed marketing access strategies for the property, or the broker will use delayed marketing access strategies stated here as permitted by the MLS rules. So that's new. That's new. Go ahead, Marika. Depends on the MLS rules. Yeah. Well, to my knowledge. Well,
Well, this form covers that maybe some MLS will allow it and some other MLS will not allow it. We still have to abide by the rules of our MLS that we're members of.
Right, that's my question.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because delayed marketing as far as like no shows for 5 days isn't really evident from the MLS. Or we have Atlee, but it is. So that's what I understand it. And this is just knowledge from the seller.
Yeah, so that would be like delayed showings, but not delayed marketing.
Yeah, that's true.
yeah, it's a lot of gray areas. I wish that we'd come up with some uniform terminology on it. And is it coming soon or what is it? Instead of having, well, delayed marketing. What's the difference between delayed marketing and something coming soon on the sign? Under the clear NAR's clear MLS policy, that does dictate some, although they've had to back off on some of the critical things on that. But it is a challenge. I had experience, and another one of our agents had the same experience with an agent that put a listing in the Pocono MLS, and it said it was in there on a Thursday, and it had no showings until it came in on a Tuesday, and no showings until Saturday afternoon. And I set up a showing for it, and I got a notice from showing time at about 4 o'clock on the Friday afternoon, saying that the house is under contract, that a buyer bought it sight unseen, and so they canceled the showing. And one of our other agents had the same situation. So obviously, when you first see that and you don't know who was the selling agent, you say, well, this agent played some tricks, right? Well, as it turned out, was the listing agent was not the selling agent, or even the selling company. It was a different company, different agent that sold it. And I was upset at first, and our other agent was upset. But how do you stop that type of thing? If it's up there, if you have a sign on it coming soon, or in this case, somebody sees it in the MLS, or actually it was out on Zillow and all the other websites, and they drive by it and they want to buy it from what they see on the outside, and they take the photos that it's in the listing, and they want to make an offer and tie it up. How do you stop that, right? You can't. You can't do it. Can't do it. So anyway, that's why I wish we could get more standardized stuff on this. But I have to find out what PMAR is doing about the coming soons and the delayed showings and so forth.
Recently read an article on our website. I didn't check it, so I don't know if this is the old one, but there was a PAR policy, or NAR rather, policy that you needed to have a listing, 24 hours after you had signed it. You had to have it in the MLS. Has that changed?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's what I was mentioning. That was a policy that NAR came up with, and it was adopted by the NAR Board of Directors that went across because MLSs, all MLSs, if they belong to an association of realtors, have to follow NAR guidelines and do what NAR says. There's some leeway, but do what they say. So there was a lot of complaints on the coming soons and all of that, and agents and brokers were really complaining about another company having the benefit of, well, they've got the listing and now they with the pocket listing. Have you heard of pocket listing? Do you have any in your pocket right now? The pocket listing. And that's what they were known as pocket listing. You take the listing and you hold it off, putting it in the MLS. You don't do anything with it, but you market it to yourself and the other agents in your office to try to keep the sale in office. Some brokers actually required that. So anyway, NAR came up with the ruling, and they called it Clear MLS policy, that within 24 hours of obtaining a listing, it had to be put into the MLS, and there was absolutely no marketing. You could not do any marketing until that 24 hours, until you put it in the MLS. You could not put a for sale sign on it. You could not put it in social media. You couldn't do anything with it. Well, there's lawsuits on that, and then NAR backed off on that. That's what I was mentioning. So, yep.
Or not.
No.
You can't.
Pocono's rules is still that you have to have it in the MLS within, I think, 48 hours. It has to be in there within 48 hours. But there's nothing that stops from you blocking showings until for 2 days, 3 days, or whatever. So it's still in the MLS, but just nobody can show it until this period of time. And of course, there's,
If that's the case, you have to check the box. If you're going to do that.
yes, because that's one of the things that delayed showing. You have to check that box. Yeah. And there's different reasons for doing it. Some people need to tidy up and maybe finish something up. But the other way, it's kind of a way around coming soon, because coming soon is not allowed, right? Another way around coming soon.
So,
Go ahead.
I have sellers that when they live in the house, we want to show on the weekend. So of course, I'm gonna block everything. except
Right.
for the weekend.
That's perfectly
I'm not-
correct.
I'm not checking this for that one.
I would not, because that's not really a delay. That's just a showing schedule. Did everybody hear that question? Yeah. Yeah, that's just one listing that I shared. It's actually JR's listing, and there it's very limited time. It's not even just on weekends. It's very limited time and just a window that will allow showings. And so, but that's part of it. That's not the, yeah, you're fine with that. All right.
Beautiful. All quiet?
That's all the changes. What's that?
That's in here. You have done-
No, we're gonna get into the agreement of sale now.
Don't you miss 7 weeks of mandatory classes for changes to the contracts? Don't you miss that? Happy anniversary. That was
Yeah,
last
that's
year.
right. It was a year ago we were going through all that. Okay. We'll continue with the agreement of sale next time. I think everybody's had enough. I'm not speaking for you though, but if you want.
There's copies here if you want to stay and read.
Thank you all for coming. Appreciate it. Appreciate it. Hi, how are you?
Good. My name is Daniel.
Yes, Daniel. Nice to meet you. Yes.
I just got hired on to the Gallivan.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, yeah, that's right. Yeah, just sign something for you on, or for Amy on that. Yeah. Yeah, it was, that's what it was for the MLI, for Public Not Association of Realtors. Yeah, yeah.